I'm going to tell you a neat story I used to hear about my grandfather. You never believe grandpas tell stories. Maybe they increase the facts. But my grandpa always talked about the time he brought Babe Ruth to town. Babe Ruth, of course, was a gentleman who played baseball in the 20s and 60s, the home run king. Babe Ruth was a national figure, probably better known than the President of the United States. And my grandfather decided that he was somehow, after the season was over, and to bring Babe Ruth up for an all-star game, in which Babe Ruth would come up to the UP, Iron Mountain, is where the Ziegelbauer family originally was. My grandfather was owned a grocery store. Nobody believed him that Babe Ruth would come to the UP, Iron Mountain, in the middle of October to play baseball with a bunch of Yoopers, I guess we call them nowadays. Well, let's think about this. There's no television. Radio was just getting off the ground. The only time you'd ever seen Babe Ruth is maybe in a picture in the local paper. So the king of SWAT, Babe Ruth, was actually coming to town. Well, my grandpa was trying to make $1 off it. So there was a mission of 50 cents to get in. And you weren't quite sure about Babe at the time. He once in a while liked to have a couple of beverages and maybe disappear for a day or two and miss a couple appointments. But it was announced. October 26, 1926, Babe Ruth was coming to Iron Mountain. The town was so excited that they let everybody out of school. It was a national holiday. Nobody had to work. Everybody was sitting at the stadium waiting to see Babe Ruth. However, because they'd never seen Babe Ruth, nobody was willing to go in and pay their 50 cents to see these two all-star players showed up. Interesting story. They all sat outside being doubting Thomases. And my grandfather did have trouble getting Babe Ruth. He was going to stay in Madison and I think party all day, party all night, they say, in your language nowadays. Well, he ran him to Madison, showed him the contract, grabbed him, and drove him in a limousine up to the UP. Well, about 1:30 in the afternoon, the big limo showed up. This limousine, not a big one, but it showed up, and everybody stood around outside the gates yet to see if it was actually Babe Ruth. So my grandfather had the window rolled down, and everybody seen the Babe. He was actually in Iron Mountain. Everybody was excited and cheering, and grandfather opened the door to the field to let the limo into the infield, and of course, everybody else followed right in. So nobody paid their 50 cents. By the time my grandfather got the door shut, the stadium was half full, and the game proceeded. It was an exhibition match. You can see it if you, it was printed recently on May 1st in the Iron Ranger Times. And it's a long article explaining the day. They let Babe Ruth play with one team. They also had him up to bat. It's a SWAT home runs, kind of like in a home run derby for a while. And that's basically the story. The ending of the story is kind of unique because after my dad took him out to dinner with all the dignitaries, the mayors, after the game, he looked at my grandpa, his name was George, and said, "George, I seen what happened." He said, "You owe me $3,000 for this event, but I don't think you've got the money." My grandfather, who always liked paying his bills, hung his head down and said, "No, I don't have all the money now." And Babe Ruth looked at him and said, "George, how much money do you have?" Well, they had these big wallets back then. And he opened up the wallet. He says, "Babe, I got about $1,500. Babe reached his hand in the wallet, took every last dime, put it in his pocket, and says, "We're even again. We're even." So that was the day that Babe Ruth came to town. Well, let's put it this way. It was such a big holiday that this year, on May 1st, 85 years later, they are talking about the day that Iron Mountain shut down to see Babe Ruth. So it was the biggest thing that happened in Iron Mountain or in the UP in a long, long time.